All right, let's call the meeting to order at 6 p.m. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Nyla Fry. Here. Trisha Brown. Sam Kaufman.
Here.
Kristen Runge.
Here.
Aaron Moran. Joseph Sisberger.
Here.
Robert McPherson.
Here.
Next item is confirmation of open meeting compliance.
I can confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Waunakee Tribune on 1/17. The final agenda was posted in all three official posting locations on 1/18 and 1/19. And the final agenda and packet were made available on 1/18. Anybody in the audience that would like to speak today, please, for public comment, fill out the form and hand it to me prior to that agenda item. And if you could sign in with your name, address, and municipality for accurate record keeping, that would be great too.
All right, so next item is public comment. Do we have anybody who would like to make a public comment?
The first one would be Don Tierney at 3564 Agri Road and DeForest.
Is it on?
It's on.
Good. Yeah, I just wanted to just mention a little something that tonight, I know you're doing the traffic safety study. And sometimes if people don't know the history, it's important to know the history behind this one situation. And I'm only going to get into this one little area. I've got a thing here that I printed out Google Earth. It's the Dean Clinic. And what I could do is basically when I'm done here, I'll just leave this with you folks, but you can bring it up on Google Earth. That's how we got it. When we, the first piece of property, when we developed this land, we had to do a CSM because the Dean Clinic wanted 5 acres of land. They wanted to stay in Waunakee and it was a big deal for them. So we met with them and we found out what they need with their engineers. And we were ready to close on the property. They were happy, we were happy. And at that point, we were contacted by the village engineers, Waunakee. And they said, Don, you're gonna have to give some extra land up. You're not gonna get paid for it. And we want you to do a turn lane and there's gonna be a stop sign there. So it isn't like a yield where somebody would be a walk person crossing would be, so it's very safe. And it was a pretty large amount of square footage because if you look at this picture and if you go to Google Earth, anybody bring that up maybe? That'd be great. Perfect. So you can see, do you have that little, what do you call that little thing that you move around? Yeah. If you kind of put it right up by the Dean Clinic there with that sidewalk with a ramp crosses. Right there, perfect. So let's say we gave the extra land so the cars can get off of the lane. And it was a lot of square footage. And they explained it to us that if somebody was gonna cross and those cars are got their blinker on and they're in that lane, they have the staging. And basically they're out of the other, there's no confusion. That's how accidents happen. So we gave that extra land and therefore if somebody knows there's somebody coming to make that right turn and there's a stoplight, they could cross. It's very obvious. There's no maybe. So we were very cooperative and a lot of square footage was given up and we're happy. So if you didn't know the story, because when we did this spring, when we did it, somebody said we need to do a safety study. And I mean, if somebody's going to do a study and I'm an engineering company and they say, we're going to pay you X number of dollars, you got to find something. Yeah. But this is pretty nice where it is.
Thank you, Don. I appreciate the comment. Yep, and the history. All right, next up.
I believe we have one online.
Yep, I do have one person online. I'll bring Mr. Gens in to speak here.
And if you could please state your name and your address for accurate record keeping, that'd be great.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, yeah, it's 2016 Foggy Mountain Pass in Waunakee.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple comments on the queue visioning process for that corridor. One about the fiscal responsibility of it. At the open house meeting in December, I asked if the MSA had a cost to it, because really as a citizen, we can't gauge whether this would be an appropriate project. It looks beautiful, of course, but without any cost, that would just be irresponsible on our part. And MSA told me they don't include those, even though they totally had them and could bring them up at any time. But it wouldn't help the process for visioning. Now, at the last meeting in planning and zoning, they were pushed to put a ballpark on it. They said up to $2 million. So I think that really puts a tag on this Q visioning with everything in today's dollars. And of course, if that's out to 5 years, that's probably $5 million. If it's out to $10 million, $20 million out to 20 years. So I think we got to really understand that the point was made by some of the planning and zoning commission people that if this was voted on as a vision or even accepted as a document, that is in history past is what is going to be passed and what is going to be pushed forward. So I don't think that this is fiscally a responsible thing to do for a beautification project. And I say it's a beautification project because I think the project is also ill-informed. They are talking about chewing up the median curb lines to create wider medians to create a safety refuge through the crosswalks because they don't think they're wide enough. They're about 8 feet at 2 of the intersections right now. However, there's been no data collected to see who is getting caught in these safety refuges of the crosswalking and can't make it across the street. And they assured me that they could do that. They just haven't. However, they did do a bike lane study of the on-street bike lanes because to widen those medians, they'd have to take away those bike lanes that are on street that commuters can easily run 20, 25 miles an hour on a road bike. They did do a study on that, and they used that to justify taking out the lanes because there's only 2 bikers in that one-day study. But that one-day study was done in November in a 50-degree weather day. I mean, that's pretty ill-informed. So there needs to be some data that is actually objective. And I want to point out a safety issue that this is creating if this were to be done, all these things. If you take out that on-street bike lane, I was a cop for 21 years. I was a bike cop for a long time. So I have some relevant information, in applying these laws and what happens when you combine commuters on multi-use paths that have a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit. If you narrow the street from curb to curb, the lanes will be the same, but you're removing the bike lane on street. You are going to be forcing those bikers either that are used to going 20 miles an hour onto a multi-use path with young families, kids that are just learning how to ride and are weaving all over the place, potentially creating situations where you could have pedestrian bicyclist accidents, or
Right.
you're creating a situation where I'll really finish up here real quick. I'm sorry.
Greg, you're at time already though. But thank you. We do
Well,
appreciate your comments.
It's creating a safety issue for sure.
Thank you very much.
And there's no traffic accidents anywhere at any of these intersections in the last 8 years. I wanted to throw that in. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Greg. We appreciate it very much. All right. Any other comments, Carla, or anyone online that would like to participate?
I have nobody else.
All right. All right. And thank you everyone for making a comment and caring enough to attend in person or attend online. We appreciate the input. Next item up then is consent agenda. Do we have anything we would like removed or pulled from consent agenda?
I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
Actually, I'd like number 3
Okay.
pulled, please.
All right. Shall pull
I'll
number
approve the
3.
remainder then.
All right. And do we have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Item number 3, approve resolution of uncollectible municipal court forfeitures. Joe?
As a general rule, this is sort of a formality kind of thing that we're taking care of here. And for the most part, I looked through this and don't have any concern, but there is, towards the end of the list, there's one individual who has about $1,200 worth of fines. My question would be, and I reached out to the clerk of the court and did not hear back, but I'm wondering if there's a reason that we may want to hold off on those, specifically due to the amount.
I can speak just a little to this. There were other ones that they held off, because they were gonna do, you know, they thought there might be another chance. Most of these, they cannot locate, they don't have any, they can't put them through the state debt collection. I mean, you can certainly take them off, but I know they have tried everything to get these. It's a lot of people that aren't in the area anymore, or they can't track them down. They don't have a birth date. They don't have a social security number, driver's license, which is some of the ways they can capture this money.
Sure.
So, I know Georgette was ill today, I believe, and, I'm not sure when you reached out.
This morning.
So, that's probably why she did not
Okay.
get back to you today. So,
If you have confidence that these have been looked at and
yeah,
There's
and the
really no
judge, she
sense.
works with the judge and they try and figure out any way to get these, and they really, I do recognize those are larger amounts than usual, but, I'm pretty confident that they have tried everything they can to get at these people.
okay.
Any other comments or questions on item number 3?
Just for what it's worth, Joe, thousands we lose on the EMS side as
Oh,
well
I
for
know.
the same
I
exact
know.
reason.
Yep.
They get in an accident and they say, what's your name? Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, yep. No, I get it. It's just one of those, looking at the amounts, it was just I guess a little more of a
Yeah, it's
concern.
most likely maybe an OWI or something like that with those higher.
Okay. In that case, I will move approval of the resolution writing off uncollectible municipal court forfeitures.
I'll second. All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next up on the agenda is reports and announcement, Public Works Committee.
Public Works met on January 9th, and we discussed 4 business items. The first was pertaining to Phase 1 of Kilkenny Farms West, and that's to come to the board tonight. The second was, it was on the consent agenda, Madison Area Municipal Stormwater Partnership, MAM swap to fulfill education permit obligations pertaining to stormwater. Item number 3, we updated the sidewalk policy. And number 4, we took action on road width of 3rd Street. And I'd like Bill just to give a little more information about items 3 and 4 that I just mentioned.
Yeah, on the our sidewalk policy, all we basically did is cleaned up the language. It's been a policy, it's been around for, God, I think we figured around 2010. So we just wanted to clean up some language and updated the codes to make sure we had the right codes in that. So that was what we did there. On that, on the sidewalk process, and the 4th one with the 3rd Street, basically what we did is 3rd Street was, for some reason, was at one time wider than all the other streets, and we're looking to, shrink it up by
To 38 feet from 44.
from 38 to 44. So,
44 to 38.
44 to 38. So that way, obviously it'll give us a nicer lay for our 5-foot sidewalks as well as the terrace area for snow storage or whatever else.
All right.
So,
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Good work. It sounds like good work was done. Create Waunakee Committee.
We did not meet this month, but we'll be meeting in a few weeks. And that will kick off our 5th year of existence, which is exciting.
Wow, that is, yeah. Community Development Authority also canceled its meeting, and we will be meeting next month. A Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee met. We had a presentation from WPPI on utilities and sustainability that was really informative and very engaging. We discussed the mission of the group. There are some requests that are going to come later on in the agenda from the group for a little bit more authority to or permission to hold events. So we will have a discussion of that in a little bit. EMS Commission.
EMS Commission met and we discussed Mainly about the study with Middleton that should be finishing up soon. However, there were some questions as to whether or not Middleton's EMS chief was getting data over to Wisconsin Policy Forum in order for the study to be completed fully. I did reach out to their alderman and their mayor just to see, and I did not hear a response back if they know what's going on over there. Otherwise, we continue to move forward with keeping everything fully staffed and nothing really else to mention at that point.
All right, thank you. Library Board.
We're not meeting till Thursday, but we're mainly going to discuss one item, which is updating our website. Currently, we use the South Central Library Systems in-house designer, and we'd like something a little bit nicer, considering that most of the other libraries that use the in-house designer, they're not doing events in their library like we do.
All right, thank you. Plan Commission met. We reviewed a couple of requests around combining lots. We reviewed a request to separate a lot into two. And then we had a lengthy discussion that was really productive on making a recommendation for the comp plan, which is going to be included later on in the agenda. Joint Plan Commission was canceled, right, Lauren? Other commissions, committees, boards that aren't listed? No? Any other announcements?
I guess it's probably other committees. I just wanted to note that the police committee meets tomorrow, 6 PM downstairs,
All right, great.
which
Thank
is
you.
a different location than usual.
All right.
And I just have one announcement regarding committees, commissions, and boards, that this would be the time to go ahead and start applying if anybody's interested. We have a few vacancies, one on the Board of Review, Community Development Authority, Joint Planning Commission, and the Tourism currently. Otherwise, we will be making appointments, the first board meeting in May.
And so the committees, just to emphasize that you just mentioned are immediate openings. So if somebody wanted to apply for those over the next couple of weeks, we will be making appointments at our next meeting or reviewing and passing on requests for appointments. All right.
I have an announcement.
Yes.
Kristen. You may have noticed on your way in, but I'll share my screen for those who are watching online. But to your left in the lobby here, it used to be a while ago was a mural, then a blank wall, and now one of the final touches to the Village Hall remodeling project was this exhibit that features our relationship building that we've done with the Ho-Chunk Nation. We have our land acknowledgement included, the Ho-Chunk Great Seal, some photos from the activities that we've undertaken together with the nation, along with some of the gifts that they've given us, including their flag, which won't be there during the month of November when we fly it here at Village Hall, a sage bundle and a tobacco pouch that were gifts from the nation. So feel free to take a peek on your way out.
And it's worth making a trip to Village Hall to see it if you're not here.
And I would note that 2 Waunakee businesses are involved in helping complete this, Creative Business Interiors, and were helped with design, and then Subtle Strauss was the fabricator and installer.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. It's wonderful to see that installed. All right, any other announcements? Seeing none, next on the agenda is licenses and permits, and this is discuss and take action on an original alcohol beverage license application for Era Waunakee, doing business as Era Waunakee.
This is a new restaurant coming into the village, and we had a regular alcohol license that was available due to Mr. Brew's rescinding theirs. So we had one available and they were able to apply for that one. It's on a first come, first served basis.
All right. Do we have any questions on this?
I'll just note, since people always like to ask when new businesses are opening, it says on Google they're going to be opening on March 3rd, after we approve their liquor license, of course.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Nyla? Aaron? Joe?
No.
No. Robert? No. All right. Do we have a motion then? And I will make a motion. I'm going to get to the page here. Let me see here. I'll recommend approval of the original, make a motion to recommend approval of the original alcohol beverage retail license for Era Waunakee, which the agent is, I'm not going to get this right, Latreem Jasufi, doing business as Era Waunakee, located at 2800 Sarah Lane, Suite C, for January 27th, 2025 to June 30th, 2025, upon meeting all contingencies.
I'll second.
All right. Any discussion on the motion?
Just that I wish these come with menus.
Yeah, that would be great. We should
Yeah.
require that, right? Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries, and I think we all look forward to trying the restaurant. Next item on the agenda is our first business item. Discuss and take action on warranty deed conveying land to the Village of Waunakee for water facilities and on the Second Amendment to Development Agreement with Kilkenny Farms West Phase 1 Residential with, which Second Amendment addresses the conveyance. And is that over to you, Todd, or Lauren, or Brian?
So this, we've obviously had a number of agreements with the property owner developer related to Kilkenny County Farms West. And going back to the annexation agreements and even regarding the Phase 1 agreement, there's always been discussions about water facilities, whether that's a water tower or a storage facility or otherwise in the development. And so within the initial plat that was approved, there was one outlot where it was anticipated that that's where the water facilities would go. Based on some additional discussions between Waunakee Utilities and the developer, it was determined that maybe there was a better location for the water facilities. And so the developer has generously agreed to convey a lot 18 within the plat to the village for at no cost, which is immediately adjacent to Outlot 6. And so essentially the water facilities are going to be moved over there. And so that's what the warranty deed relates to. The agreement, and so this is pages 59 through 66 of your packet. The agreement is simply, I would call it administrative updates to the phasing agreement, to the development agreement to acknowledge the fact that the water facilities are going to move to that Lot 18 and Outlot 6. And then Exhibit B to the agreement, which isn't in the packet, but I placed it before you. That's the 2-page document. So all this is it's just something that shows essentially there's going to be a water main that's going to be constructed by the developer that's going to run from Shriner Road east to Outlot 6 and Lot 18 to where the water facilities are going to be located. So it's a pretty, I would call, mundane action. It's no cost to the village. It's something that's been worked out between Waunakee Utilities and the developer. This did go to the Waunakee Utilities Commission, and they approved the new location for the water facilities. In speaking with the attorney for the developer and with Tim Herlitzka, there's the possibility that we might need to have some standard utility easements associated with this. So, if you look at page 59 of the packet, staff does recommend approval, and I would just add, so right now the current recommendation is, for a motion, is move to approve the warranty deed conveying land to the Village of Waunakee for water facilities, to approve the Second Amendment to Development Agreement for Kilkenny Farms West Phase 1 Residential. And I would just add to that, and approve related easements subject to final review and approval by Waunakee Utilities General Manager and Village Attorney. Again, these would just be standard utility easements that we'd utilize. I'm not even sure if we actually need them, but I don't think that they would rise to the level of you all needing to have to address them at a subsequent meeting, which is why I'd be asking for that additional aspect of the motion. Certainly willing to answer any questions that you might have.
Great. Do we have any questions? Robert? No. Joe?
Nope.
Aaron? No. Nyla?
I spoke to staff about this and they said it's a good plan, and so I think we should move forward with it.
Right, excellent. Do we have a motion then? Not, I'll be happy to make it. I move to approve the warranty deed conveying land to the Village of Waunakee for water facilities and to approve the Second Amendment to Development Agreement, Kilkenny Farms West Phase 1 Residential, and related easements subject to the final approval by the utility manager and the village attorney.
Second.
Right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you. Next item up then, item number 2, discuss and take action on approval of a comprehensive plan proposal. And Lauren, I believe you're presenting this.
So I just turned it on. As most of you would remember, we issued an RFP for comprehensive planning services back in October. Before the deadline, we received 9 proposals. Very well done. we're very happy with everything that we received. Staff took the time to narrow it down to 4 who were interviewed by Plan Commission. And Plan Commission, over a couple of meetings, narrowed that down to the proposal that's in front of you tonight, which is from the Lakota Group. They're a consultant out of the Chicago area, but their principal planner actually went to UW, is very familiar with the Waunakee area, and they're very excited to potentially take this project on. Staff is also completely on board with the recommendation from Plan Commission. So we're requesting approval of the proposal from the Lakota Group in the amount of $138,864 and authorizing the Community Development Director to execute the contract, because basically the scope is laid out already in the proposal.
All right, thank you. And before we go to questions, Joe, I'm wondering, as a member of the Plan Commission, if you have anything you'd like to say about the proposal?
I don't think so. I think it was, well, I guess I do have a little bit to say. I think it was a very strong proposal. The presentation that was made to the Plan Commission by that group was amazing. The number of people that they brought in to showcase the different skills that they've got. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
No, that's all.
Thank you. And our 4 finalists were all excellent, really great proposals, but this one stood out for almost all of the Plan Commission members as the kind of the clear choice for who we wanted to work with. Nyla, do you have any questions?
I basically just have a comment and well, kind of a question too. When it talks about an online survey, it always concerns me when it specifies online because there are residents who use internet not at all or minimally. But I also see there's 3 pop-up events. So I'm wondering, during those pop-up events, do they take the information that's communicated and actually, document it so it can be considered? That's my only comment.
And so for the online survey, I think we'll communicate to them that we would like to have a paper and pencil option as well for those that don't use.
That would be
the-
great.
Okay.
And then if we could make them available at the senior center and the community center and the library, that would be wonderful.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think we could probably make that crust. They'd probably honor that. Yeah. And then the pop-up events, I do believe they record the information. Lauren, you've worked with events like that before.
Yeah,
right?
so normally there will be some kind of engagement activity that's done. There will be boards that people can either write messages on or there will be some kind of physical takeaway that the consultant has that they then either scan what they've received or they'll translate it into like an appendix that says what information they got from those different events.
Sam, did you have any questions or comments?
I would just, echo what, some people on the planning commission said that, any of these firms would have done a great job for us. I certainly agree with the recommendation that was made here and the desire for a fresh, sort of more outside perspective.
All right, thank you. Aaron?
No,
No.
I'm good right now.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Robert?
The question that I had is, so they have, I'd say the biggest positive that I saw in Lakota was their experience with the Dane County Regional Housing Strategy, considering that that's part of what spurred this entire conversation in the first place to move it up in timing. So I was impressed with what I saw for that. I did learn a little bit about, just from the notes on here, about how we penalize the groups that go overtime on their presentation. I just thought that was slightly amusing that we had that in the notes. But I think that this is good. My only concern with them was the number of meetings that they provide. I know sometimes that our commissions like to have more meetings maybe than many people are used to. So, I just would keep an eye on if there's going to be any complaints from the Plan Commission that they felt like they didn't get enough time with it with the 6, because I know some of the others, I think MSA was at 8. And sometimes those few extra meetings can make a difference.
I think that's good feedback. Yeah. Yeah. Any other comments or questions? No, seeing none. Do we have a motion?
I will move to recommend move to approve the comprehensive planning services proposal from the Lakota Group in the amount of $138,864 and authorize the community development director to execute the contract.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item on the agenda then, on page 131, discuss and take, or discussion on a 6-month update for the Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee. And this is to you, Lauren.
Yep, so the resolution for the Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee requires a 6-month update. We're a little behind on that and I apologize for it. But, and again, and also carried over from the last meeting because I wasn't here, and again, apologies. And so this is just kind of an update on what the committee has been doing. There is a related item after this that we'll get to once we get through this. But the Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee met first in April of 2024 was their first meeting. There are 11 people on the committee from a broad array of areas of the community. On average has met about every other month, not by the actual calendar, just kind of on average, the number of meetings we've had, it equals out to about every other month. And the committee hired or recommended a hiring MSA professional services, which village board approved, to do the kind of heavy lift of what this committee is tasked with, which is coming up with a sustainability plan and recommendations for village board. So that's currently in process. I meet with MSA once a month to get project updates. They're currently in the data gathering phase. And so I've gotten them into contact with people at Waunakee Utilities, WPPI, the school district, Pelletary, pretty much anywhere throughout the community where we've got sustainability initiatives going on or that work directly with the village. They've gotten in contact with them and started doing some of those data requests. They'll come back to MSA, will come back to the committee in March to do another update. And then I think the plan is to do another update after that in June.
Excellent, thank you. And comments or questions, Nyla?
No, thank you for the update, and I will want to speak after, in the next part.
Excellent, Sam?
Nope.
Aaron? No, thanks, Lauren. Joe?
Just that I'm looking forward to the engagement.
Robert?
Mark, can you tell me the past 6 months, how many meetings we've had for this versus what was scheduled?
Not off the top of my head, but I can get you that number in a couple of minutes.
Okay, but I mean, did we have about, well, I'll ask the chair, did we have 3 of the 6 months we met?
Oh, I'm gonna rely on Lauren. So
Okay, so
I missed
nobody's-
one. I was out of town, so I do think we had 4 meetings.
We had the one
Out of
where
the
that
6
was missed because the agenda didn't go out.
Mhm. Yeah. And then we'd one for lack of material.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay,
So-
I asked this question not to pick on anybody at all, but I've had citizen members of the committee reach out to me and express displeasure with how many meetings that weren't had. And since this is a limited engagement ad hoc committee, I just would hope that we can be a bit more, I know that they changed the meeting time to make it easier to meet the number of people, but really just cognizant of the fact that we made a promise to the community that we were going to take this seriously. And if they feel that we're missing the mark because we're not having the meetings, I think that's something that we should take seriously. This is absent of what we're about to discuss with the next business
Yeah,
item.
and I think that's fair criticism. We are, and we've been very careful in making sure that we're meeting the objectives of the charter for the group. So we're still on track for all of that. But yeah, the uneven meeting is in part because the night that we picked was not conducive to a couple of the members attending. So that is, that's just been an unfortunate fact, but I believe we've worked through that now. And our schedule is agreeable and workable for those of us that are on the committee, but absolutely, yeah, that's a fair criticism. Yeah. So any other questions? No, all right. Then let us move to the next item on the agenda, page 132, discuss and take action on a request from the Sustainable Waunakee Ad Hoc Committee to conduct public-facing events.
Yes, so this is the kind of second step of the update. When the committee was created by resolution, it was given a very narrow mission, which was to gather data and come up with recommendations to village board. Having handed off a lot of that lift to the consultant, the charge doesn't allow for the committee to do things like public facing events or educational promotions, I guess is a good enough word. So the committee asked during a very long and fruitful discussion, ended up asking to request from village board or voting to request from village board the ability to do public facing events and educational activities in addition to the event, the charge that they've been given by village board. Because right now the charge by village board doesn't allow them to do this.
All right, thank you, Lauren. And Nyla, you had comments that you wanted to make on this.
Yeah, since Kristen appointed a very skilled sustainability committee, I feel that Waunakee is very fortunate in that we have very motivated people working on that committee who thought that part of what they were charged with was doing education and doing projects to push sustainability ahead in Waunakee. And so there was perhaps a communication lag or misunderstanding. But I feel that as long as we are fortunate enough to have people who are willing to do the work to promote sustainability and do projects to get us into sustainability, we need to utilize their motivation, their enthusiasm and commitment to this project. Again, I feel that we are very fortunate to have the committee that we have, and we need to allow them to do the work that they honestly thought that was part of the committee assignment when they started. Thank you.
And I'll just say that I nominated them and the board voted to appoint them. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, we had a excellent group of people that stepped forward with it. Other comments, Joe, do you have anything you'd like to share as a member of the committee?
I'll hold off till the end. Thanks.
Okay. All right, Aaron.
Yeah, I'm fine with this. I think that's great that there's interest, not the same thing, but Create Waunakee is a committee charged by the village board, and events have really helped give it life and recruit outside interest and kept that momentum going. And also I think a huge thing is just like making connections with other groups, which is the point of this committee, is to further our sustainability in the community. So I think if this can plant some seeds, maybe literally, that would be good.
All right. Sam.
My comments were sort of along the lines of Aaron's, if you allow the group to do events, that allows you to give it legs and sort of snowball in the future. And obviously we've seen that with Create Waunakee, where it's now a nonprofit and it's doing more things and getting more recognition, funding, et cetera.
Robert.
So I guess my concern primarily lies within the fact that when we originally did this resolution, there was, I think, intent at the village board level that they would not be prohibited from taking some actions on education, things like that, and that the role of the village board would then be if it was something that required a village board action, such as a resolution, ordinance change, things like that related to sustainability. That was why we had the discussion to have 3 village board members on there, so that there would be a pretty good number of village board members that would come into this meeting with, some prior thoughts and feelings on what was being recommended. That being said, I don't have an issue with making it clearer, but I just would state from my perspective when I voted on that it was not prohibiting them from doing this. So this just seems a little bit of, I understand if there was maybe some legal uncertainty revolving around this, but I view it much like Create Waunakee in that you know, there was probably an intent there that they would be able to take action to do public facing things that don't cost money, things that are just, you know, good reminders about eco items. And that was why we had staff on there, because then staff could take that information, because staff takes actions every day within the village that we do not expressly permit. They just do it as a part of their job. So, yeah.
Right, thank you. Joe?
So the things that don't cost money was kind of my first thought. I don't necessarily have a problem with this, with, I guess, two caveats. One, that there is little to no cost. And the second being that it doesn't take some sort of exorbitant amount of staff support. So as long as those two are covered, I think we're pretty good. The only other question I would have would be for Attorney Kleinmeyer. Is there any legal concern with allowing the group to go out and do this?
Well, to answer that, let me try to, I mean, because I think your question also dovetails with Robert's comment. I mean, I'm looking at the resolution right now, and in part, I'm looking at page 134 of the packet, sub 3 of the resolution, where it talks about working with the public. And so, I mean, going to public facing events, certainly I think potentially falls within the scope of that paragraph already. And so, you know, I mean, if you're going to, if the board believes that the request is beyond the scope of the existing resolution, typically you would then amend the resolution. In other words, you wouldn't just do a simple motion. You would actually have a new resolution that comes back to you. I'm not sure that that's required because of the language in there that requires or that allows the working with the public. What I'll say though is, you know, for an ad hoc committee, and this I think gets more to Joe's question of, typically committees cannot incur costs except at a very de minimis level. And committees cannot make commitments on behalf of the governing body. So to go back up to the memo, and it looks like the request is members discussed an interest in doing public facing activities and outreach to the community for education events. I think there's already an argument that says they can do that based on the existing resolution and the reference to the public. I think they always have to take into consideration what Joe was saying is, in other words, we can't just take all of staff's time on this. In other words, this is an important committee, but there's a lot of important things that staff do. And it just has to be clear that they're not going to be able to incur costs except at a de minimis value, whether you have this resolution or, you know, that's where if you're going to adopt a new resolution and you do want to give them a little bit more freedom, that's where you need to be more clear in the resolution. My gut, based on what I'm hearing, is I think they can do this already. They can only incur costs at a de minimis value, including not taking up too much staff time. And as an ad hoc committee, while they can share information, they can't make any commitments on behalf of the village because that's only for the village board.
All right. Appreciate the clarification. Yeah, Nyla.
Also, one thing that I would like to say is that with the new positions that we have brought on in the village, we have freed up quite a bit of time for different departments, and I don't see any issue with one meeting a month, getting the agenda out and doing the minutes for these meetings, because we have freed up time in many departments. At the same time, at one point, we had 2 staff members at the meetings, and I feel that 1 staff member is sufficient, and that change has already been made. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions or comments?
I just would point out, I did pull the original resolution that created Waunakee, or create Waunakee, sorry. And even in there, it doesn't explicitly state that they can, you know, do anything that they do today.
Mhm.
And we're fine with it. I mean, we like Create Waunakee. We want it to do these things. So I will say from the perspective, again, tying into speaking with members in the community about this, this action that we're going, if we take this action tonight, it feels more symbolic to maybe, you know, say, no, we hear you, we want to do more. But I really think that we should make it clear that we were, like Joe said, the things that do not cost money. I mean, that was always, I feel like, the intent. And if that charge was not carried, then that's kind of a miss on behalf of, I'd say, the village board rather than any of the members in the committee not understanding what they were signing up for.
All right. Any other questions, comments? None, even though it might only be symbolic. I would like to make a motion that we as the village board authorize the Sustainability Ad Hoc Committee to conduct public-facing activities on behalf of the committee in the village.
Can I make a request? I would tweak that motion just to, I mean, because you're not amending the resolution, I would just make it clear that the section 3 of the initial resolution already authorized that.
All right.
Because I think that that's what you're saying.
As authorized by section
Yeah.
3.
Okay.
I'll
There we go.
second it.
All right. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, thank you all for the discussion on that. Item number 5, excuse me. I discuss and take action on the final draft of the County Q Corridor Visioning Plan. That's page 136 of your packet.
Yeah, so this came about a year ago when we were initially discussing the amendment to TID 6. The developers agreed to a corridor study for South Century Avenue, which had an approval deadline of February 2025. So any plans that the village came up with would need to be adopted for implementation by February 2025. If the study were concluded after that point, the developers would continue with the existing grading and construction plans for Kilkenny Farms West. So MSA Professional Services was hired in June, had multiple meetings with staff. We had a meeting with Plan Commission in November, an open house for the public in December. And then they went back to Plan Commission last week. Plan Commission declined to take any action regarding the plan. But we're still, because ultimately the decision lies with Village Board, bringing this forward tonight for review and possible approval of the corridor study. So we have Steve Tremlett here from MSA Professional Services. He's been the kind of main person regarding this. So I'll let Steve take it from here.
Sure. Thank you, Lauren. Assuming, are you seeing the presentation on the screen?
Yes.
All right. So yeah, just recap, this is a long-term vision plan for this corridor. Obviously, it was a 4-lane with the median, getting people into the community, and we are tasked with looking at how can we make it safer, more attractive entry point while still maintaining access for existing and future development along the corridor. I do want to reiterate, this is kind of the first step of the process to consider some recommendations. But ultimately, you would need to do preliminary engineering to confirm the design, construction documentation to bid out the work either in phases or all in one project. And so part of this is identifying some high impact enhancements as well as some future improvements that could be considered. Laura mentioned the process started in June of last year through tonight, several meetings with staff, stakeholder interviews, Plan Commission twice, an open house. We did use village data on speed and noted that northbound traffic through this corridor is higher than desired speeds was tracked. Southbound traffic was shown in compliance to speed limits. Some noted that they've observed otherwise on some of the traffic speeding up as you exit the community. Woodland shows decent compliance. Also part of this project was to get 4 locations of traffic counts, because currently the DOT has counts that are further north of the high school at roughly 10 to 11,000 ADT, and then just north of County K around 12,000. So through this entire corridor, there weren't any tracking of data for traffic counts. And what did we learn from that? That was back in November 7th. It was 57 degrees that day. We did each segment, and basically you're seeing roughly 17,000 from the south coming into the community, holding steady through 16 to 17,000 as you get to Woodland, and then it drops off as you go north. So the main thing we can deduct from that is that there is traffic that is leaving on Woodland, but generally is staying to the south within the same range as entering into the community. As noted, we talked to landowner stakeholders and we had the open house. The main thing that came out of that is, yes, the road is less than 10 years, questioning if it makes sense to do some of these improvements, but ultimately safety is the key concern, followed by enhancing the character of the corridor long term. So really there was 4 big ideas that came out of developing this. One is safer intersection crossings. And how do you do that? Reducing the distance someone has to cross. You move crosswalks within the medians. In some cases, they're not existing now in that way. Also thinking about how is that crosswalk identified. So in this plan, I'm showing you example. On the right is existing. We see images on the left here are examples of ideas to first put in some markings. Ladder would be that preferred version to enhance that. Then also considering refuge in the medians of increasing that. There's chances for kids to not be able to cross all the way due to traffic of making turns. And so the comfortability of that 5 to 6 feet that exists now in that image you're seeing there on the right is not feeling that safe. We have looked at from comments about how do we holistically look at these improvements. We originally looked at the entire corridor of removing the bike lanes, which I'll talk about next, and impacts to the medians. And we initially looked at about 3,800 linear feet of impact to medians. But from the comments we heard over time through this process, we found ways to really improve the 2 intersections that matter most. Here is Woodland and Peaceful Valley. What you're seeing in this graphic in the center, and you'll see in the final plan, is the white is denoting where we're saying the curb and gutter would be impacted. And areas that are black are existing. So even in the case looking in that center image, the left turn that would go onto Sarah Lane, we won't impact that median. In this case, we would just have a greater separation between the travel lanes and that turn lane. So really only impacting areas that really provide that additional refuge in the median. Again, to accomplish that, you have to look at removing bike lanes. I know there were some comments earlier tonight about this. Yes, one of the things we looked at in those traffic counts is where bikes were being traveling through the corridor. Yes, it's only a one time, but also observations that we've heard from the public through interviews that typically the traffic is on Woodland for bicyclists and less so north-south in County Q. The level of traffic between pedestrian and biking is not warranting specifically to have separate dedicated facilities. And you would say that there are different kinds of bikers. There's the experienced bikers that are going to be on road. Generally, most bikers are either inexperienced families or children, and those would always be riding off-road in this kind of corridor, even if it's a sidewalk. And so the reality is, if you do remove the bike lanes, the experienced riders that are using the road currently would remain on road, but we are also providing the opportunity of a bike ramp that you see that image here in those cases where we're ending the bike lane. So I'm not suggesting you paint the green bike lanes. This was more for displaying what we're representing here, where this bike lane coming before Woodland would come off road, that opportunity for those users to come to the multi-use path. And then you'll see that to the south, Peaceful Valley on the right here, where traffic using the multi-use path could get back on road when the bike lane comes back to the street. Northbound, you see that too, they come off before Peaceful Valley. So that allows you to increase the medians on Peaceful Valley and as well as Woodland. And again, this is not saying this has to happen next year. These are just visioning of how you can consider how to improve those intersections with minimizing impact to drivers. And again, we're not eliminating bike lanes, drive lanes through this area. We're just looking at the bikers plausibly going off-road or staying on road, but there's 2 lanes in both directions that can allow those experienced riders to continue. We did look at 2 intersections related to traffic, truck movement, and any potential opportunity to reduce those crossing widths again. So this is Woodland is an east-west street here, County Q. So that northeast corner of that intersection, the black lines is what we proposed in the vision. The current is further back on an angle, and we've shown that how movement from both east and westbound can still sufficiently get in that lane to go northbound. To reduce that bend allows it for vehicles to generally have to slow down versus whip around the corner. And it also provides shorter distance for walking. Big idea too is increase comfortability for pedestrian bikers by increasing terrace width, the space between the curb and the walkway. The example here on the far right shows between Sarah Lane and Woodland, where the existing path is shown in green, where it is roughly a few feet off the curb, while the actual right-of-way in yellow is much further to the east of there. So potentially when this site would redevelop, there might be an opportunity to consider move that path further back, usually about a half foot or a foot off that right-of-way line, to give that greater separation to the street, where it also offers the opportunity for trees that also create that buffer from you, the walker, and the road. And also potential for respite areas. The number 7s that we're seeing here, kind of like kitty corner off Sarah Lane, is a few locations that we suggested maybe having a bench in a little respite area. Number 3 is improved pedestrian connectivity. There are portions of this corridor that lack sidewalk or multi-use path. Some of those images are shown here, where number 1, you are providing the west side of the street, a multi-use path from Centennial all the way to Peaceful Valley. Then number 2 is, per conversations through stakeholders, that if you are pushing more traffic onto the multi-use path, this northeast corner of Woodland Drive is not as safe. To have to do a quick right turn and a quick left turn to use a school bike path. And so this was an idea to actually allow this more free flow that you'll see in the concept for number 2 there. Number 3 was also noted as number 1. And then 4, Peaceful Valley, on the south side of that road, there is no sidewalk between Q and Simon Crestway. So this is something we looked at. This is the one area, and I'll talk about it, that we suggested maybe going down to 1 lane at that turn. It already turns to 1 lane as you go east, where cars are speeding up to get into that 1 lane. This would resolve some of that with adding that walkway as well. So here's that showing again turning movements. And also notable here is that slip lane for vehicles that exists right now to go right. That was built with the easier flow of traffic. There is a stoplight there, but it's been observed and commented on how cars still whip through that corner. And so riding that up to have a right turn lane here, where vehicles have to stop and make a tighter turn, helps for safety and visibility of those walkers. And it happens to also provide another chance for a respite area where that green person is. Number 4, beautify the corridor. We showed throughout pedestrian lighting where there is a sidewalk or a multi-use path. That road is quite wide, and the lighting that exists in the median serves for drivers. It does not provide any real light for the pedestrians. And so in the concept, you'll see spacing of 120, 130 foot separation for ped lights to be added along paths. Potentially long-term or midterm, you look at replacing the existing median lights to be matching of the same character that you have in the downtown and further north of this corridor. We showed many areas that could have some landscaping. We did minimize the planting beds. You'll see this little section here if you see my mouse, only having those at one location in each median, and centrally located in most cases. So reduce the maintenance over time, but does give that repetitive look of certain kind of themed plantings to go with the lights. So again, creating this character that as you drive through the several blocks that you're seeing this repetitive aesthetic and character. Also noted potential for signage. One is a new Waunakee Village Center at the south end of the village limits that could be in the median, similar to other signs in the community. And then that path at Woodland, where I mentioned that we would kind of make that better connection from the multi-use path to the school path. This could be an opportunity. You would have to do a little bit of regrading because it does slope up there, to provide maybe like a limestone wall there with welcome to the village of Waunakee, an aesthetic piece there. So I wanted to be brief, but again, changes from stakeholder feedback was, did not remove any driving lanes except for the Peaceful Valley down to 1 lane that already turns to 1 lane to improve safety and provide sidewalk. Focus on improving safety and comfort for pedestrians with character enhancements as the next important item. reduce median curb and gutter impacts from 3,800 linear feet and 20 inlets down to just over 1,400 linear feet and 3 inlets. So that's a significant reduction in where we are impacting the median long-term. And the last one is reduce the number of planting beds due to maintenance concerns long-term. So in the packet, you'll see that there's two primary exhibits. I did want to add a little bit about, again, what are the high impact enhancements that could be considered kind of more recent this year, next year. The multi-use paths that are already part of development, ladder painting the crosswalks, street trees, that would really enhance the corridor. Those three items right there at a lower cost, but shorter midterm, think about those planting beds in the median, installing missing other paths and sidewalks, pedestrian lighting, move crosswalks into the medians. And again, maybe that northeast corner of reducing that radii, that corner turn. Long-term, midterm, look at expanding the medians, remove that bike lane section, the slip lane removal, and median lighting. So again, I see there's a lot of options here to consider, but overall, the vision can happen over time. So I went really quick there. Open for any questions you may have.
All right, Steve, I want to start out by saying thank you for all of the work on this over the last couple of months as we've given you feedback and you've received feedback from the public. Some of it's been pretty heavy, and the way the plan has evolved to accommodate that feedback, and especially looking at this list where you have high impact, short, midterm, and mid-long-term changes that we could make in this potential plan, I really shows kind of your responsiveness to what everyone has been sharing with you. So thank you very much for that. Before we go into questions, I just wanted to make that comment. With that, what questions do we have? Or Lauren, do you have anything before we go into questions? No? All right, so what questions do we have? Sam, could I start with you?
Well, I'll just make, some more statements here, I guess, more than actual questions. Again, thank you for your work on this. Some of the comments that we heard were that, premature or so forth, whatever. Really, I think the closest comparison that we've ever done to this is probably the 2003 Central Business District Plan. And if anybody in this room hasn't actually read it, it's pretty interesting just because of how old it is to see what Main Street looked like, what it was envisioned for at that time versus what it actually looks like now. And some of the road connections and so forth, a lot of that plan we didn't do. Some things, we did. There were some comments raised at the Planning Commission about, well, why not Schumacher? Again, that's a state highway. That's going to be redone next year. I know Joe was at the meeting to discuss that project, and thank you very much for attending that. And as for this section here, you can't really do a whole lot in terms of trees because we've got an ATC transmission line here, and we need that space for snow storage and the terraces and so forth. I'm not really, again, interested in, going in and ripping up all kinds of curb. I think some of the basic stuff, moving in the corner with woodland there for the turn radii and so forth is a good idea that we ought to consider, certainly moving some of those crosswalks. And I will say, I do appreciate that in general, what this has spawned is it has spawned a greater conversation in the community about pedestrian safety. There are a couple low-hanging improvements based on comments that I personally received that are already in the process of being done to the corridor or have been done. One of which was we were having some real trouble keeping bulbs in those gooseneck lights. Some intersections, in fact, were actually completely black. People expressed concerns about not being out there. They'd go out there in the morning and there weren't lights there. And I went out there and checked, and a couple months ago, close to 50% of the lights of those goosenecks were actually out. Utilities has gone out there and fixed those. They're still working on some of the timers so they match up with the other half that they replaced and so forth. And the other thing is, we talk here about northbound speeding. And if you've driven that, you have people that they turn on from K, right? And they're not necessarily getting up to the speed limit. And as soon as you hit that fourth lane, you're trying to pass them. Well, in that mile stretch that's 4 lanes, northbound, right, is where we have the speeding problem. There's that one speed limit sign right by Meffert Road, and you don't see another speed limit sign of any sort until you get to the speed board that's out here almost down to Centennial, where if you go in the southbound direction, there are 2 signs. So we're going to work as soon as the ground gets warm enough for us to put some poles in, we're going to fix that. We also talked about, similar to what you see on other multi-lane roads, installing some speed limit signs in the median. So that way people in the left lane of traffic, they can more clearly see what the speed limit is. Again, obviously a sign doesn't, necessarily control people's behavior. Obviously, it's the way roads are built and psychology, but at least makes people aware coming on from some of those side roads what the speed limit actually is.
Thank you, Sam. Nyla?
Thanks, Steve, for the presentation. Safety is very important, and as Sam said, there are many changes over time to any plan. But one thing that I wanted to point out is those pedestrian areas and respite areas. They benefit children, older adults, and the physically challenged. So they are important, and I just wanted to state that.
Thank you. Thank you. Erin?
Yeah, my first comment is now an echo of Nyla's. I think the respite areas are a great addition, and as many of those we can sprinkle throughout town, just makes us a more welcoming place and helps people connect with their community. If that little respite area can truly be a respite for someone that wants the challenge of maybe walking somewhere that maybe they would otherwise drive, or maybe they can't walk, and it just makes it a more positive experience for them. Yeah, I think we asked you to dream big, and I am thankful for this. It doesn't mean that we're going to go out and do everything. As I know there's comments about that, or even I've heard things of, yeah, you're tearing up the whole street. It's more of like, what can we aim for and what could we work in? And I think we are at a good point of this as we see this area develop more, but we already have an idea of how people are already using it, what situations that maybe weren't there when this was first being redone, or et cetera. So I think this is nice to have as we continue moving forward and putting attention and resources on this corridor. So yeah, I'm thankful for all of your work. Thanks, Steve.
Robert?
So first off, thank you to the team over at MSA for doing this. So this, for those that do not remember, those who were not here when this was originally discussed, the reason that this study existed is because there was a there was a request to do improvements in there using the tax incremental financing district, and it did not pass the first time. And rather than sit at a deadlock and wait for the numbers to work, I did reach out to both the village, the school boards, and some stakeholders to say, what is it that we could do to improve safety in this area? When we discussed it, when I voted against it before, stated it's because of safety. We're opening a school over there. We have an existing school over there. I'm thinking of my own child who loves to bike to Arboretum now and who will try to bike to the intermediate school when she's older. And there's no way, pardon my language, there's no way in hell I'm letting my child cross Highway Q the way it is right now. That would be, I'd be waiting for a call from police department that she got hit. And sure enough, it's not on Q, but right off the side of Q there, we did have a pedestrian incident with a vehicle involving a school child this year already. So we know that people are coming off because it is a highway. It's a highway where people are transitioning from 50 to 55 to 40. It's wide open spaces. There's significant studies on this that when you have a wide open space, you're going to go faster because you feel safer. You feel like you should be going faster. I know the police department loves to set up a speed trap down there right in front of Water Wheel and sit in the median. And I'm pretty regularly see them with people pulled over going either direction. So, compliance down there is an issue. We've received complaints repeatedly from people who live just off of the area of Peaceful Valley about people accelerating off of that turn lane. Somehow you see the most amazing T-bone car flipped accidents there when you're coming up Peaceful Valley, and it's people that are speeding in from the road there. So, anything that we can do to get people to slow down a little bit, it makes sense. Does this have everything in it that I had hoped? No, I don't think so. I think that anything that we do with this is going to be a compromise. But the fact that we did not prioritize the safety of pedestrians in the first place, the fact that, I do believe that there was a commissioner that asked a question of, there's not many people out there using it as a pedestrian path today. Who would? It feels unsafe. You have cars speeding past you. It's not enjoyable to be out there. And I know that businesses would love to set up outdoor seating that's out there, but It's not exciting to sit outside and eat when you have a highway with noises right next to you. As much try as I might, my best example would be, I love eating outdoor at Athens Grill over in Westport. But in the summer, sometimes it can be a loud mess out there when you're just sitting out there trying to talk to somebody and there's cars going by. So not having any barriers of any type out there, it makes it a problem. I will say also that when it comes to the cost of this, I believe that the intent is that it would go into the tax incremental financing district. So handled much like other improvements that we've done. And I will be honest, I would feel that if it's an improved and beautified area, that it is going to allow for greater tax income when businesses want to be in that area because it looks desirable and it looks like a place they'd want to develop. The only item that I would continue to stress is for those that are concerned about, putting cars first and things like that. We really need to ask ourselves, are we trying to get people through the village faster, or do we want them to slow down and enjoy what's in the village when they're coming through? There are clearly, then the traffic counts show that a lot of people do divert off in the woodland area. So we know it's not just people passing through completely through the village just to go on to their final destination. And I know that someone will say, well, we should do a destination study, and I agree. I'm also will echo Sam's comments. I'm excited now that we were having the comment about pedestrian safety, conversations about pedestrian safety, because it is something that's been sorely lacking when we talk about roads within the village, especially as we drive to have wider roads at every opportunity. It is time that we start allowing people to have a choice within the village, and I think this takes a good first step to promoting people using things other than cars, which will help keep counts down if people feel that they can safely walk to areas, especially as we have continued residential development in this corridor, which is the future use of this corridor if you look at our existing comp plan now. So I think that what we are doing now sets the stage for all future development in that area to be safer and to think more of how can we get people out there walking, biking, doing things other than just deciding I need to drive across the street because it's so unsafe to get across that road.
Thank you, Robert. Joe?
I've got a list and it kind of goes all over the place here. I want to start by confirming that the multi-use path on the west side adjacent to Kilkenny West is planned. And although it's noted here, that's something that's going to happen regardless. Is that accurate?
Yes, I
Accurate.
believe so.
Okay.
Sorry.
So with that, I will say there are items that I agree with in here. There are some items that frankly I find relatively unnecessary. The high impact items that are up on the screen, I think are some fantastic things to do. They're low cost. They're relatively quick to put in place. The short and midterm things, there's some things in there that are good. The long-term stuff concerns me from the standpoint of things change over time. And we've done this plan and that's all great, but go out 10 years and who knows whether this will be really worthwhile or not at that point. So I'm not totally sure whether I will end up supporting or not, but let's see, what else do I have here? One comment that Robert had made was about the speed enforcement along Q, and I happened to do a ride along with the PD 6 months ago, something like that. And that was actually one of the more exciting places that we spent in the village, was right along there. And it was not a busy night by any means, but I think there were still at least 2 stops that were made while we were sitting there. We weren't even there all that long. So I do know that speed is a concern through here. Safety is obviously a concern through here. If we go forward with this plan, if we accept this tonight, I think I want to point out that just because we accept the plan does not mean we're committing to the money or the actions to necessarily do any given item that's in here. So that's just one thing I'd want to share with the public. So that was sort of rambling, but that's my thoughts.
It's all right. That's all right. So I want to, I'll convey some of the concerns of the Plan Commission, but before we get to that, I just want to ask a question that I think is a confirmation. What we've planned for Kilkenny West and what is already under construction on that side of the road is not affected by this plan. Am I recalling that correct, Steve? That what we have on the west side is already meeting kind of our goals?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Because that was in our original proposal that whatever we accept by the 25th could potentially change that development. And we do not see this, accepting this as changing anything that's happening in that development. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, good, good. I just want to make a clarification there. So as the chair of the Plan Commission, I'll say that some of their concerns were, as we've heard from one of our citizens who called in earlier today, costs and not knowing the costs. But as Joe mentioned, we're not committing to undertaking any of these at any specific point in time, or committing with accepting of this to spending money on any particular item in here yet. Timeline was also a concern, and one of the concerns relative to the timeline is we do not know what will go in the site that we believe Hy-Vee will go in, or when that will go in. And particularly with the, I just want to call it a slip stream, but the slip lane being perhaps needed in the future if that becomes the route by which semis enter what will be the Hy-Vee development. That was one of the concerns if we remove that and then end up needing it later. But I see that's on the mid to long term, so that is not something we would most likely consider until we know what is going into Hy-Vee, and that's or where Hy-Vee's going in, if Hy-Vee goes in, when they put that in. Also concerned, we're not knowing what the residential vehicle in and out will look like, but still needing to balance the idea of pedestrian safety, because knowing that those folks in that community will want to be crossing Woodland to get to some of the amenities on the other side. The landscaping, for my personal preference, I really did like the idea of the landscaping and beautifying that area. That is one of our entrances to our communities. We have some beautiful buildings that have gone in over there. We're gonna have a nice new neighborhood over there. So anything we can do to enhance the beauty of that area and keep up that feel would be really great. Go ahead, Nyla. Yeah.
I would like to make the.
Yep.
I'm sorry. I'd like to make the point that in the recommended motion, it says this would be a long-term guiding document.
Yes.
So it would not be concrete.
Yeah, absolutely. So what Sam, you said with the Century Corridor, or not the Century, the downtown development visioning document, which if you haven't seen, that really is really neat to look through. This being kind of an analog to that is how I view this document, and thinking that it is a nice long-term vision.
And I would also say, in terms of some of the comments, well, this is a highway or whatever. Well, in the 1960s, we would have said the same thing about this road.
Yeah.
Let's be real about that. When things get built, we don't necessarily, know necessarily what the, patterns exactly are going to be. I would say, in regards to the slip lane, once we start seeing some houses, really start to go in on the west side, perhaps we could at least consider as an interim thought is what you see on a lot of these slip lanes. You see it at K and 12, for instance, is putting like a no turn on red sign.
Yeah.
Once we see the, how many people are actually going across the road to go to the other side, they're not just turning on to Century.
Yeah, and along that, I've seen a number of communities where they have actually put their semi-temporary plastic bollards in that, so that it's still a slip lane that can be used in the future, but it really blocks any traffic from going down there, and it becomes a pedestrian slip lane. So I think there are some ways of achieving that without taking the road out completely, and seeing what the effects would be when we get to that point. So those are my comments. The Plan Commission voted not to do anything in regard to this. They didn't accept it, they didn't approve it, but chose not to take action. Any other discussion on this?
So when we brought this originally, it was about adding an additional turn lane to the road.
Mhm.
So I would like to hear from MSA why we would still need to have that section of the road be 6 lanes at that point. And this would be on a turn lane onto future proposed right turn, future proposed into, is that Yasky at that point?
So
We-
you're looking at the intersection of Woodland and.
Peaceful Valley,
Peaceful Valley,
sorry, I
okay.
guess that would still be Peaceful Valley, not Yasky. So Peaceful Valley, extending it into the non-existent area currently that would become Kilkenny West.
The
I mean,
design
actually,
is
I'd
to have
ask,
the
I-
left- Go ahead,
well, I
sorry.
mean, I guess I'd ask why you need right turn lanes into, dedicated right turn lane into Peaceful Valley headed westbound when you're headed southbound on Q, because you're now making six lanes where there is currently 5.
Are you talking north or south of the Peaceful Valley intersection?
I'm talking the Peaceful Valley part intersection. So on the north side of it, so if you're heading southbound on Q, turning right onto the not yet built Peaceful Valley.
Yeah, we weren't charged to analyze what was already designed for that movement through that intersection into that neighborhood. The TIA handled that. We were looking at how we can improve safety and comfort and aesthetics. That could be something you may want to charge to look at that further, but we are making sure that where we made improvements was not impacting vehicle movement while still enhancing the corridor. The
Okay,
TIA is what looked at that and determined that was needed.
do you know the, what do they call that in traffic engineering? Is it a grade or a score where they A, B, C, D, E, F?
Level of service through the
Level of
corridor, through
service,
the
thank you.
intersection.
Yeah. Was that something that you guys had when you were working this?
Our mobility team did look at the TIA and noted anything of concern, but that was not a charge to say that that needed to be removed, that turn lane.
Does
based on our
anybody,
analysis.
can anyone either between MSA or the village provide what the level of service is for that intersection as proposed?
I
Nobody
would have to
knows.
go into the TIA to look at it, so it'd take me a minute to pull it up.
I can wait until it is relevant to this.
It is. So just as a decision, thinking of the decision tree, since that wasn't part of the scope of work for MSA and it's not included, does that affect your acceptance or not acceptance of the plan?
Well, I think it's important that we understand what the level of service is when we're talking about acceptance or not acceptance of the plan. So for example, if it is a level of, I don't know what it is. If it's A, which would be the highest, then that means that it's definitely going to be prioritization of vehicle traffic meeting a certain timeline. We're talking about such a small stretch of road between the end of where it's a two-lane highway and then it becomes a 4-lane, my favorite word, strode, and then it becomes a 2-lane road that what we know about here, that I'm wondering when we're looking at visioning, is it part of your vision to have an overall goal to meet a certain level of service along with how the corridor looks? If we say we want a level of service of A, then we're going to say, okay, then that's going to require us to still lean heavily towards, we're going to prioritize vehicular traffic. If we say we're accepting more of like a B or a C, we're going to say, well, it might inconvenience somebody to the tune of 15 to 30 seconds on their overall commute, but it becomes infinitely safer for pedestrians since we know that the lower speed that a vehicle is traveling, if there is, God forbid, an actual pedestrian versus car accident, it severely increases their chance of survival if the vehicle is traveling slower. That's why it's 30 miles an hour probably right outside the street here. So I do think it is relevant to understanding the long-term visioning that we know what the goal of level of service is in the area.
And so if this plan doesn't, just understanding why we're looking it up and what the decision, this plan doesn't fit that, then your decision would be to reject the plan and.
I wouldn't say that my decision would be to reject the plan. I just think that we should vote understanding what the level of service is for it. I'm not stating one way or the other how it would impact my vote, but I think that we should have the information available because when we were discussing this, again, originally earlier in the year, or I'm sorry, that was last year now, earlier last year, and we were talking about safety and things like that, it did have to come down to the fact of, and that was what, I think the ultimate negotiation was to start this timeline was, do we really need to have that additional turn lane? So I think now that we're coming full circle with that and we have to make a decision tonight because the timeline is running out, I think that is relevant to the conversation. Absolutely.
Okay. Just understanding what the concern is so that we all know what your concern is and can think about it well. Lauren's looking it up.
Northbound, southbound is for County Highway Q at Peaceful Valley Parkway is level A across all lanes.
Okay.
And can you, just so we're clear, describe, and so those listening, what level A means? This is like a oral exam for grad school right now for urban planners.
It's like, I
Yeah.
feel like I'm taking comps and I didn't study.
I'll be honest, this is traffic engineering speak, so I couldn't even jump in for you. Apologize.
Okay, so level of service is based on calculated vehicle delays. So level of service A means that there would be little to no delay. It goes down to level of service F as delays increase. This corridor being a limited access, limited stopping highway, it makes sense that the northbound, southbound lanes of this highway at each of the intersections is a level of service A.
It makes sense in the context of if it was 10 years ago and there was no development and we wanted a highway where we're getting people from point A to point B, correct? Well, actually, I don't answer because I'm forced you to have an opinion. That's not fair. But to my point, we know what future development in this area is. So maybe we could look at as a long-term visioning plan, again, and I'm sure Lauren has the exact numbers, but as you decrease from an A to a B to a C, again, we're talking a very small stretch of road. We're not talking about degrading the quality. So that everybody's clear, we're not talking about degrading the quality of the road. We're not talking about creating massive backups because that's where you get to an F. And some towns would love you to be an F because they want you to roll through as slow as possible and stop their businesses. But a B or a C is not unreasonable, or even a D is not unreasonable in a residential area where people are expected to be slowing down, where we want them to naturally slow down. So I'm just putting that out there that if we can consider that for the long-term plan, that we're not always trying to get to an A,
Yeah.
that's a part of a long-term vision.
I think that's a great thing to consider. And I am wondering, because we are also simultaneously starting a comprehensive plan, if this is a conversation we want to apply to all of the village and not just this particular intersection.
And while I understand that,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm interrupting.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm just looking at the decision we have tonight of accept or not accept.
And that's where I'm getting to. So we put ourselves a little bit behind the eight ball because we have to make a decision tonight on this one because that was what was impacting it came down to this one right turn lane where I said, I kind of put my metaphorical foot down and said, 6 lanes is enough. Like we've got 5 out there. How can we not, how does this impact the traffic that doesn't, that we can still have 5 lanes and that traffic is not severely impacted, especially considering that we were adding in an additional right turn lane, one entrance prior at Yaski. That is, you can't really easily, in fact, I don't think you can make a turn from Sarah Lane to turn left onto southbound Q. No, you can't. So we know that if somebody wants to go into the neighborhood at that point, and we're only talking about the difference of those outlots at the bottom there, so probably not even any real development. Now, the developer, to their credit, did express concerns that if I don't have all of these right turn lanes, I may not attract the businesses that I want in there, and this isn't a TID. So I say that with recognition that we should be concerned that we need development in the TID because we are committed to the growth in that TID so that it can pay for the improvements. But I would still, as I stated back in, I guess it was May, I would still question, why do we have to add in that 6th lane down there at Peaceful Valley when we're adding in the 3rd dedicated turn lane, turning right onto Yeski prior to that? And I understand that's beyond the scope of MSA, but that was the original debate that we were having back then. And that was what that was the genesis of this entire study and everything that came from it. So I still think it's pertinent, but and I agree with you. We should be talking about level of service in the comp plan because that's important. It's something that people don't think about. It's like that hidden factor that traffic engineers don't want to talk about because engineers probably all love to get A's just like they did in college, right? And so they, when you're like, well, how about a C or D? They're like, but that's not an A. So I really would urge, that we have to ask that question of if we're talking about safety and we're doing this whole thing and it's our chance to do it now before it's dug. To address that concern of some of this is 10 years old. That's right, it is 10 years old. We had a different engineer back then. Things have changed. But I still think we have to question if we do adopt a long-term vision for this one area in particular, that not being an A is okay, then what would the impact be? And I understand that we're out of time. So we have to make this decision with incomplete information.
Well, and I will add that when we initially approached MSA, one of the issues we put forward to them was looking at this as a 4-lane road and whether it needs to be 1 mile of 4-lane road when the rest of it is a 2-lane highway. So we did initially have them look at that, but when the mobility team went through the TIA and started doing some of that initial round, it became clear that it wasn't reducing the amount of lanes would probably not be the responsible way forward, either fiscally or otherwise. So we did have them look at it, but it was ruled out fairly quickly that it would remain a 4-lane road, even with some of these turn lanes increasing it at those intersections.
And I was soundly defeated by the rest of the board when I suggested a road diet, so I quickly abandoned that as well. So I get it's deeply unpopular thought, but again, it goes back to this one specific turn lane, considering that we're adding in the lane prior to it, which has more direct access to the businesses before it. I still don't, that's the part that I'm gonna continue to struggle with, is that even in this plan, we still have it as 6 lanes across there. And while I appreciate the safety improvements that we are going to put in there, hopefully, in the long term for pedestrians, it still seems to send a mixed message when we're like, but let's add in that 6 lane into that area.
All right, that's a lot to chew on. Yeah. Reactions, anyone? Nyla? Sam?
Well, I mean, I don't necessarily have strong feelings either way, to tell you the truth. I mean, you look at the intersection with Woodland going to the school. We have a lot of people that do turn to go to the schools at 2 different times of the day. That is a through and right turn lane, but you know, people going to the school, they're also not semi-traffic
Yeah.
either.
Mhm.
You know, ultimately, frankly, it's not necessarily the greatest answer, but it's like, well, I'd sort of rather almost and again, this is not necessarily how it works, but I'd almost rather the potential user be able to make that decision for themselves. Obviously, that's not how this works,
Mhm.
but in an ideal world, that would be wonderful.
All right, thank you, Sam. Erin?
Yeah, I mean, I understand where you're coming from, Robert, and I think it's important. I'm also right now like trying to walk myself through recent intersections I feel like I've been in. I was just walking over by Hilldale and like Midvale, and there's a lot of lanes there. It's also the infrastructure and those improvements made me feel really safe, and I was with someone that was a little slower than me, so it's like that. Even downtown, I'm thinking of these turn lanes are, there's 4 lanes going down University, but that right lane is now with the red, or at the bus anyways. It's like, it honestly feels safer as a pedestrian when I've been walking, because that right lane is people are only there for a block and they're turning most likely. So it's like, I don't know. I understand where you're coming from. I also think like if we can get people like in this balance, I think I'm okay with accepting this plan at that point. But I think it's something important to bring up, important as we go forward with the comp planning, especially that should be considered everywhere. Especially even more so, I feel like downtown, where we only do have 2 lanes and we see people going way too fast and people don't stop for pedestrians. So,
And that's a situation where we could consider, like perhaps
Yeah.
if the DOT will allow us to painting ladder style crosswalks on
yeah.
top of the terracotta ones that we always hear the engineers talk about fade, and they're bumpy and they never work the way they're intended to.
Joe?
If we accept this, does that make it a foregone conclusion in the comp plan? Or
No.
okay.
I mean, you could accept this tonight and then make different decisions in the comp plan that effectively would override this, because, and that would be, if you did that, presumably you have more information, I think along the lines of what Robert's talking about. And so you're just making it a new decision because you have a greater amount of information that allows you to make that decision. So if you approve this tonight, it doesn't handcuff you as it relates to the comp plan.
And to use the other side of that, if we do not accept it tonight, some of these ideas could still make it into the comp plan.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So, any more comments? Do we have anyone who would like to make a motion?
I'll move to adopt the County Highway Q Corridor Visioning Plan as a long-term guiding document for the village.
Second.
All right, any discussion on the motion?
I just assume that we would probably, like we did with the 2003 plan, probably put it on our website somewhere, I would assume. We can do that? Okay.
Side by side.
And I do want to say that your comments, Robert, about level of service and whatnot are something that I do think that we need to really think about every time we're looking at any sort of construction and improvement. So thank you for thoughtfully making those comments. All right. With that, any other comments? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Abstain.
All right, thank you. All right, next up is, and sorry for not calling for abstentions, Joe. Next up is discuss and take action on Town of Westport Notice of Intent to Incorporate petition. And we have one on discuss and take action on Waunakee Area Fire Department intergovernmental agreement. Both of these are for closed session, so I will read one and then we will contemplate going into closed session. Read the other one and we'll contemplate on going into closed session for that. So discuss and take action on Town of Westport Notice of Intent to Incorporate. The village board, well, first of all, do we have anything we want to say publicly or anything to present publicly on this other than?
Since the last board meeting, we've had 2 meetings with officials from the town of Westport. I would characterize those as positive meetings. I think that's how we've characterized it to them during the meeting. That's how they've characterized it to us during the meeting. And we obviously want to share with board members potential terms and conditions, if we want to move forward with some type of agreement with Westport related to their incorporation petition.
I would only add for both these items and for closed session for those in the audience or those watching. I don't expect that either will require us to come back to open session for any action.
All right. All right, so with that, discuss and take action on Town of Westport Notice of Intent to Incorporate. The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.85 1G for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the village who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the village with respect to litigation in which it is or is likely to become involved in, The village board may reconvene in open session and discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session. All right, despite my rough reading of that, do we have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Seeing none, Carla, roll call vote, please.
So Nyla Fry.
Yes.
Kristen Rungy.
Yes.
Joe Zisselberger.
Yes.
Aaron Moran.
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
Yes.
And Sam Kaufman.
Yes.
All right. Next item is discuss and take action on Waunakee Area Fire Department intergovernmental agreement. And the goal of going into this closed session is to discuss intergovernmental agreement and make some updates. With that, Todd, do you have anything you'd like to share on that? No? All right. The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.851E for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the investing of public funds or conducting other specified public business wherever competitive or bargaining reasons require a closed session. The village board may reconvene in open session and take action on the closed session item. Do we have a motion to go into closed session on this one?
Motion to go to closed session.
Do we have a second? I'll second. All right. Any discussion on the motion? Roll call vote, please. Carla?
Kristen Rungy.
Yes.
Joe Zisselberger.
Yes.
Nyla Fry.
Yes.
Robert McPherson.
Yes.
Sam Kaufman.
Yes.
Aaron Moran.
All right. Thank you. And we will go into closed session at 7:38 PM.